3 years ago, I was living with my then boyfriend in a one-bedroom apartment in a little mountain town. It was a half-basement unit, so the bottom of all of our windows was level with the ground outside. It was also an older apartment, and not all the windows could fully lock. One day, my boyfriend comes home from work while I'm lying on the sofa and immediately runs up to the window near me and looks out of it frantically. He then goes to look out every other window in the house, then walks around the outside looking in the windows. When he comes back from this confusing exploit, I ask him what the heck is going on and why he's being a spaz. "I think I just walked up on a dude looking in the window at you. He took off as I walked up," he tells me. This was naturally very unsettling, but after discussing it and considering the time of day, it was about 2 p.m. and a number of people out and about around the complex at that time, we came to the conclusion that it was just a curious neighbor or somebody passing by, happening to glance in. With that, we forgot about it. If only that was the end. For the next couple of months, odd stuff happened here and there. Somebody would knock on the door occasionally, and when I went to answer, no one would be there. I'd find things in my apartment that I wasn't familiar with, or things like clothing items would vanish. I didn't really think twice about any of it until one night. My boyfriend and I were arguing around 1 or 2 in the morning, and we were being a little loud. We were standing in the kitchen face to face. His back was to an open window with the blinds up halfway, and I was facing it. Amidst our arguing, I glanced behind him at the window, thinking I saw the reflection of my face in it. The window was open. It wasn't my face. There was a man with his face pressed almost against the window screen watching us. Given the fact that we were arguing and it was late, I thought for a moment it might have been a concerned neighbor walking up to the window to speak to us. A main walkway for the complex was right on the other side of the window. So I spoke to him. "Hello, can I help you?" I asked a little aggressively, thinking a neighbor was intruding on our privacy. He responded to this by staring, unwavering and cold, right at me. His face did not change expression. He did not blink or move, just looked right at me in a way I have never been looked at before or since. In this instant, I also realized that because of the window being level with the ground, the only way this man's face could be where it was if he was lying on the ground outside the apartment or crouched and contorted to look into the window. My heart sank. I buried my face in my boyfriend's chest and closed my eyes in fear. My boyfriend, up to this point, thought I was messing with him. When I buried my face in his chest, only then did he say, "Is there really somebody at the window?" I whispered yes to him. He felt my fear and took a moment before he turned around. By the time he did, the man was gone. It was at this point I started to think about all the little odd occurrences that I've been experiencing. I assumed the worst. I filed a police report with his description, and my brother loaded my apartment up with weapons to protect me, or at least inform this peeping Tom that I was armed. After that night, I, my boyfriend, and my brother were on high alert. There were a couple of times when my brother came over that he saw a sketchy dude hanging around, and even one time he saw him at my window. He tried to follow him discreetly, but the guy took off running as soon as my brother stepped in his direction. The last night I had an experience with this man, I was sitting home alone on my couch. My boyfriend was at work at a restaurant about 2 blocks away. He had picked me up from work an hour earlier. We had sat on the sofa together a little while when we got home, then he kissed me and left for work, locking the door behind him. After he left, I continued to sit on the couch on Reddit for a while in silence. After about an hour of me sitting there in silence, I hear a door creak open. It's a small apartment, so to see the bedroom and bathroom doors from the couch, all I had to do was lean a little to the left. I assumed it was one of my cats coming out of my bedroom, so you can imagine my shock when I lean over and see the door that's opening is the door to the water heater, closet, or small storage space. I look to my right and see both my cats sleeping soundly at the other end of the couch. I look back to the door and it's still creaking open very slowly. It opens enough for me to see it. A set of fingers wrapped around the door, easing the door ever so gently to open it as quietly as possible. That was going to be a no for me, man. I ran my ass barefoot out the door, into the snow, and down the street to my boyfriend's work. I called the cops. When everybody was back to check out the apartment, he was of course gone. After that, my boyfriend and I packed our shit, went to stay with my parents, and 6 months later moved 1,000 miles away from that town. That was the end of it. Since I live so far away now, a part of me thinks there's no way this person could have found me. But last week, I heard a knock on the front door of my apartment. I was expecting a package, so I figured it was a delivery driver and didn't answer. I go get the package later. Then they knocked again. And again. The third time it made me feel really uneasy, so I waited a good 20 minutes to check the door. When I did, there was no package, no note, no nothing. Somebody was just knocking. Although it made me uneasy, I didn't initially think back to my stressful experience in my last town. Then 2 days ago, I went out to get groceries. I have a little patio and I go out there in the mornings to just chill or check on plants a lot, and I've been known to leave it unlocked in the day on accident. Never thought of it as a huge deal. Until I came home from the store 2 days ago and the deadbolt to my apartment was locked. The deadbolt could only be locked from the inside of the apartment, period. I assumed somebody robbed me because I dumbly left my patio unlocked. I called my sister. I called my current new boyfriend. I waited for people to be with me and I went into my apartment through the sliding glass patio door. Nothing was out of place. Nothing of value was taken. At this point, my heart sank. Nothing was touched. Nothing stolen. Somebody was inside my apartment just because they wanted to be inside. I told my boyfriend about my stalker and he is not taking this lightly like my past boyfriend. I filed a police report. We checked for recording devices and cameras. He put Nest cameras up all over the place and we are on high alert.
This happened many years ago now, but it's something that I will never forget. It was in the early 2000s, and at the time, I was a young single mother with 2 sons aged 7 and 4. There was a new video game system that my sons had been talking about all year, mainly my older son. I was planning to get it for them for Christmas, but I didn't have a whole lot of money to spend. For Black Friday, the local Walmart was having a huge sale, and the video game system was one of the things that was on sale. I knew that it was a great opportunity for me to buy it, and I made plans to go to Walmart. So for Thanksgiving, we stayed at my parents' house, and that allowed me to get up early and go shopping by myself the next day. Walmart opened at 6 a.m. that year on Black Friday, I believe, so I got up before the crack of dawn and drove there. When I arrived, the store had not opened yet, and it was still completely dark outside. However, the parking lot was packed, and I had to park sort of at the back of it. There were people lined up outside the store and walking to the front from the parking lot. I had never seen it like this before. I walked up to the store and got as close as I could, but I was still behind a bunch of people in line. I had only got there about 5 minutes before they opened. Camping out in a tent overnight or something like that wasn't really an option for me. I hoped that I would still have enough time to get the video games, and I felt confident about it. Soon enough, I remember hearing the crowd cheer and the doors opened. I watched countless people run inside the store and inched closer with the people that I was near. About a minute went by before I was able to enter. By the time I got inside the store, there were literally people everywhere. I remember that the electronics department was at the back of the store, so I tried to walk as quick as I could, but there were so many people that it took forever. By the time I made it there, I looked around for the video games. Unfortunately, they were gone. I looked around the electronics department for at least 10 or 20 minutes. I was just hoping that I would find it or that there would be one somewhere, but it seemed as though it had sold out. Finally, there was an employee available to talk to, and he told me that they didn't have any left. I was very disappointed. I decided to try another store to see if maybe they had a similar deal. I hadn't really looked in all the advertisements in the paper the day before because I had been banking on Walmart to work out. I was surprised just how fast the video games sold. So I left the Walmart store and the mob of people. I walked through the parking lot back to my car. However, when I got near it, I saw something strange. There was a guy with a large SUV and the back of it was open. He was standing there selling electronics out of the back of his car. He was parked at the way back of the parking lot, kind of in the corner where there was actually a little bit of space. I saw a couple of people standing around and talking to him, but there wasn't like a crowd or anything. When I realized this, it seemed kind of shady, but I thought that maybe there was a chance he had the video games that I wanted to buy. So I walked over to him. When I approached, I saw mostly other electronics, but I did see a few video games. When I walked up, he told me that he had stuff cheaper than they were selling inside. I asked him if he had any of the video game systems that I was looking for. He looked in the back of his SUV for a moment, which had a lot of stuff in it. There were boxes and wires and all kinds of stuff back there. He told me that he didn't have any with him at the moment, but he said that he did have some back at his shop, which was not far away. Now, the whole thing seemed sketchy, like I said. I didn't think this guy was supposed to be selling stuff, and Walmart would probably shut him down or call the cops on him. But I was angry for missing out after waking up at 6 a.m., so I didn't really care in the moment. I asked the guy where his shop was and what it was called. He said that it was his place, and he said that he would take me there quick. I was surprised to hear that. I thought maybe he would go back there and come back. I said that I could go to my car and just follow him, but he said no. He said that we could go there quick and it was just down the road, and then he would drive me back to Walmart. I told him okay, and then I went around and got into his car. This was a stupid idea to begin with, but at the moment it didn't seem that bad. The man got into the driver's seat and then started driving. He left the Walmart parking lot and turned onto a dark and quiet road. I told the man how crazy it was inside the store and how I really wanted to get the video games for my son. He said that he had several gaming systems and he would sell it to me for cheaper than the sale at Walmart. Aside from it seeming really sketchy, the guy did seem pretty nice. Things then went quiet in the car for the most part. He drove down that road and then turned. It was still dark out and I wasn't quite sure exactly where we were going. After we were driving down that road for at least more than 5 minutes, I started to get nervous. The guy made it sound like his shop wasn't that far away. After driving down the road for a while, he turned again. Then we went down that road for at least another 5 minutes. I no longer knew where we were anymore. I asked the guy how much farther away his place was. He just said that it wasn't much farther. Then he turned on this one road that was even quieter. I was getting a bad feeling that I should not have gotten into the car with the guy. We drove down this really quiet road for at least another 10 minutes. Now we were driving for close to half an hour. At that point, I just wanted to get out of there. Nobody was saying anything. I sensed a change in the guy's overall personality. I was now afraid to say anything. I felt like if I asked again, he would tell me that he was kidnapping me or something. The guy now almost seemed to be angry. We kept driving and came up to a red light. That was just what I wanted to see. It was this quiet intersection and there were really no other cars on the road. The area was more rural here, with woods off in the distance. As soon as the man stopped at the red light, I just grabbed the door handle. Thankfully, it opened. I jumped out of the guy's truck and just ran for it. He did not try to stop me. I went to the right in the intersection and noticed this small little gas station down the road. I saw the man's truck go straight, driving away from me. I went to the gas station and went inside. There I called my parents, who were able to come and get me. When they heard about what happened, they were just glad that I was okay. My parents and I ended up buying the video games for my son together that year at a higher price from another store. So I guess it all worked out, but I'm really glad that I got out of that guy's car when I did. I'm not sure where we were going. I should have never gotten the car to begin with. That guy was already being sketchy for selling stuff out of the back of his car in a Walmart parking lot. This happened back on Thanksgiving night of 2013. This was back when I was 18 years old and living with my parents. We were hosting Thanksgiving at our house, and we lived in a pretty good neighborhood. One thing that was interesting, though, is that we lived less than a mile from a local shopping area. At the end of the neighborhood, there was a busier street, and if you walked down it on the sidewalk, soon that entered an area with a bunch of stores. There was a Target, Walmart, Best Buy, and all that stuff. So this was a year where a lot of stores were actually opening on Thanksgiving night. I didn't have plans to go shopping until maybe the next day on Black Friday. I was really just enjoying Thanksgiving with my family and hanging out watching football and stuff. There was a lot of people at our house, like grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. One of my cousins, Jake, who I'm close with in age, was probably the cousin that I hung out with the most at the time. We talked a lot during that Thanksgiving. I remember that he had the idea to walk down to the store after dinner and see how the shopping was going. At first, I was like, nah. But he said that it would be fun. He told me just how crazy things would get on Black Friday, and he had gone shopping in the past on Black Friday and said that it was fun. So soon he had convinced me. It sounded interesting to see what the buzz was all about. The plan was to walk there and only be gone for a little while. So Jake and I left at maybe 6:30 or so. We walked down the sidewalk to the local shopping center, which only took about 15 minutes or so. I remember that when we approached, it was crazy. There were cars and people everywhere. Particularly the Target and Walmart were extremely busy. We got there, and at first we were just walking by. One of the first things we noticed was that there was a bunch of cop cars at the Walmart and the lights were flashing. We were obviously curious as to what happened, but also figured we better stay away. So we walked down to the Target and went inside and just walked around for a bit. It was pretty crazy, a lot more so than I would have expected. We didn't get anything, and a short time later we decided to head back. When we left, there were less police cars at the Walmart, but still a few of them. At that point, we walked back home, and were gone for maybe an hour total. After getting back, we just continued hanging out with the rest of the family. We were in the living room watching football and talking and stuff. Around 8 o'clock, some people started leaving. By 9 o'clock, about half the people were there, but still only a few. I remember that it was late in the football game when one of my uncles who was standing by the window said, "There's a guy walking around your backyard." Our backyard was not that big, but fenced in and had several trees and bushes in it. My dad got up and walked over to the window, and I did as well. When we got there, we saw that there was this guy sort of at the back near the fence. He was walking behind a row of trees and heading towards the back corner. It looked suspicious right away, as none of us knew him. He was wearing jeans, a gray sweatshirt with the hood concealing most of his head, and he also had a backpack strung over his shoulder. I thought that maybe he was going to go out of our yard and then into the neighbor's backyard, but instead he turned and started walking towards our house. He was just barely within our view, and he did not look at us, so I don't think he noticed us at the window. He kept walking, and soon we couldn't see him anymore. He was over towards the other end of the house, so we moved over there. My dad decided to go into the backyard and tell the guy to leave, so we went over to the door and opened it. He walked out and looked around, and I went outside behind him. I heard someone quickly moving away from the backyard towards the other side of the house. I heard the leaves on the ground moving, but we didn't see the guy as that part was out of view. He seemed to go around to the side of the house towards the front and was probably leaving. My dad yelled for whoever he was to get out of our yard. We stopped hearing the guy, so we walked around to that side of the house. We still didn't see anything, and we didn't see the guy walking off into other people's yards or down the street either. It was strange, but we figured that he was gone, and we went back inside the house. It was probably like 20 minutes later there was a knock on our front door. There was a police officer there. He asked us if we had heard anything strange or unusual. We immediately told him about the man. The officer said that he would look around, and within minutes we saw another police car get there. Then they found the same guy who we had seen still hiding in our yard. The guy was next to the house behind a bush. They arrested him, and it turned out that he had never left, even though we thought he did. The man had robbed the Walmart on Black Friday and assaulted 2 people. That's why we saw all the cop cars there. He fled the scene and ran all the way to our neighborhood and ultimately to our yard. I'm glad that the cops looked there. We had no idea that he was still in our yard. We thought that he had left, when in reality, he just hid out of our sight.
I wanted to tell you guys about my mentally unstable neighbor who I will be calling Kay to respect her privacy. Because I don't want to call her crazy or anything else that contributes to the stigmatization of severe mental illness. This story isn't going to be exaggerated to be more creepy or anything like that. It's just what happened. We had just moved into our new home, which we had recently built in a town in Texas. It started when my parents began finding small pills strewn about our backyard near the fences, just a few here and there. We googled the numbers of the pills to find most of them were antidepressants, but I cannot remember the exact names as this was about a year or so ago. But I think there was at least one pill that Google said was an antipsychotic medication. We were pretty confused but mostly worried about our dog eating them before we could find them. This kept happening over a few weeks, and then we found unopened water and Gatorade bottles thrown over our fence. The side of the house this was coming from had a somewhat empty lot next door. We had soon-to-be neighbors building their new house there, but it wasn't like the construction workers were throwing their trash over our fence. These bottles were unopened and full. For reference, Kay lives a few houses down from mine on the corner. Between our house and hers are 2 empty lots. The lot closest to us, with a new house being built there. After another week or so of this came the fights, or maybe incidents I should call them. Kay would routinely storm out of her house and go yell at the construction workers. I don't know what it's about, but apparently it's about nonsense things. Sometimes she would yell from her yard. Sometimes she would walk onto the lot to yell. Several times she was seen yelling at no one, just standing in the lot or walking around the construction supplies, and arguing to herself. By now, most of the people on our street knew of her and were afraid of her. Up to this point, I had never seen Kay. I attended university an hour away and was only home on the weekends. One weekend, my parents left me home alone in the middle of the day. I think they were at the gym or the grocery store. I'm an only child too. I had just gotten out of the shower and walked downstairs to hear yelling. I peek outside the windows to see a middle-aged blonde lady arguing. I couldn't see who she was talking to, but I could hear another male voice. Now, I had not met Kay yet, but I also hadn't met my new neighbors, but my parents had. So my first thought was that this was the new couple building next door. My new neighbors. It seemed like they were arguing about the house. After a few minutes, the blonde lady walks away, and then a couple comes out of the unfinished house, and They get into their car parked on the street. I'm really confused at this point, especially when the man walks over to my door and rings the doorbell. I'm very introverted, so I opted to not answer the door, which was kind of stupid, I know. My parents weren't home anyway, so it wouldn't have made a difference, I thought. After a minute, he walks back to his car, and from the window, I can see he's sitting there on the driver's side, doing something. He comes back with a note that he leaves on my door, and then he and his wife drive away. After I'm sure they are gone, I get the note and read it. Apparently, my neighbors were checking out the house when they saw Kay, the blonde lady, attempting to get into my backyard. They confronted her, and that's what the yelling was. In a rush, I sent a pic of the note to my mom, called my mom, etc. She didn't seem that worried about it, but I knew that we always left the back door unlocked during the day. If she had gotten through our fence gates, she could have easily walked inside the house while I was home alone. After that, my stepdad got some new locks for the little gate doors at the front of our house. Things continued like this for a while, with Kay trying to get into our backyard, throwing pills and water bottles over our fence. A couple times, she was rummaging around our flower beds too. There was one instance that really unnerved my parents. We have a small alleyway that runs behind our house, connecting everyone's driveways. Another neighbor who lives across the alleyway from us contacted my parents to let them know they had been seeing Kay looming around their back fence gate at around 3 a.m. that night. Not sure why those neighbors were awake at that time, but they said Kay was just standing there in the middle of the alleyway, staring at our back fence. Knowing we had someone essentially casing out our house in the middle of the night was really starting to freak us out. The guy who built our house, who I'm naming Jay, somehow got in contact with someone who knew Kay's family pretty well. Everybody was wanting answers to why Kay was acting like this, and since Jay had built most of the houses in the area and was well connected, people were asking him. I think he was friends with the realtor who sold the house to Kay, but I'm not sure. Anyway, Jay was able to give us a lot of information about Kay. Apparently, her family was rich and owned a very big corporation, like one of the biggest in the US. I'm not naming it, again for her privacy, and her family had essentially placed her in this house away from the rest of them. They did not want to deal with her mental illness, but more importantly, 2 years ago, her only son died of a drug overdose, and she's been unstable ever since. The reason why she wants to get into our backyard and keeps throwing stuff over the fence is because she believes her son is there. Not sure if she thinks we're holding him hostage or his ghost is here or what, but that's why. She's been to several psychiatric hospitals throughout her life, and now she's stopped taking her medication because she's throwing it over our fence. Things finally came to a head in January 2020, when, during one of her usual arguments with the construction workers, she pulled out a BB gun. She was already very aggressive, so the BB gun just made things 100 times worse. I don't know if she just threatened to shoot them or actually did, but the cops were called regardless. It took them a while to talk her down, with several police officers swarming the street with big guns. I am thankful that my parents had been following police reports, so when they came, they knew about Kay's history of mental illness. I am both grateful and a little surprised that they handled the situation so well, because not a lot of police departments properly train their officers to deal with mentally ill patients, especially ones experiencing psychosis. I still have ring camera videos of the police officers with big rifles loitering around our front lawn while assessing the situation. I might post that for proof, but I'm not sure it's necessary. Anyway, after that incident, Kay was not seen for a long time. We hear she was in a psychiatric hospital for many months, after which she returned to our neighborhood. She's doing much better now. She no longer does any of the strange behavior she used to. Almost every day, I and my parents see her walk her dog past our house. She's clearly sticking to her routine, and I'm happy for her.